Nepotism. Nepotism is when someone gets a position because of their connections. Normally, it's a family or a friend connection, so that family or friend gets you a job, gets you a promotion, and it has nothing to do with your skills, your abilities, your training. It's just simply who you know. And a lot of times people will say it's not what you know, but it's who you know. So we probably have all seen this happen either in real life or in movies, books, TV shows, whatever. When I was growing up, I was raised um, Christian, Catholic for most of my life. And then I guess when I hit my teenage years, non denominational Christian. And of course, if you're raised in a patriarchal religion, you're raised that men are the head of the household and women are submissive and are the helpers in the household, which, that's a whole different story that I could go into, because if you actually look at the Greek term or the Hebrew term for helper, it's the same word that God uses for himself. So it's not actually a sign of being lower than. It's a sign of actually being powerful enough to influence and change someone through your abilities, through your presence. So that's a whole nother post that I can make. But so I was trained as a child, as a young adult, that men were the leaders, and I was supposed to be aware of that and submissive to that and try to, keep quiet and be deferential and all that stuff, right? So I went into marriage like that. And my first marriage didn't work. And as I came out of that first marriage, I guess you could say that I had had a lot of my illusions shattered, because I think that my family, my church, my community had given my ex-husband a lot of credit because of his image, because of his presentation, because of how well he spoke, how intelligent he was, how mannerable, how polite. All of those things had given us a certain impression of character. And the thing about impressions is sometimes when, as people say, when shit hits the fan, when times get rough, all of that superficiality that you think is substance shows up to not be substance. And so I got a rude awakening when we had twins and I wasn't able to work consistently for the first 6 months of my pregnancy. I really had to stay home and take care of them, that he was completely overwhelmed, completely incapable of doing what needed to be done. And rather than man up, which a lot of women have to do when they get into a situation where they feel overwhelmed, they don't pay it any mind. They just do what needs to be done. He ran away from those responsibilities. He ran to the streets and clubbing and drinking and smoking and other women. And he wanted to feel like a man in other ways because he wasn't feeling like a man at home. And so that was a rude awakening for me. That was something I never would have expected in a million years, just didn't see coming, just didn't have any inkling. And I remember my mother and I having a talk about how shocked she was, how, she was so, really liked him and was so happy that I had this great man. And then we literally saw him fall apart before our eyes. And, I'm trying as a wife to be his helper, to be his encourager, to be his support, to be all these things. And this dude is running away. And you can't help somebody who's not even willing to face up to what's in front of them. It's very hard to help somebody when they're running away. In my case, it was really impossible. So that was my first big eye-opening experience where I said to myself, wow, what I was told and what I expected and the things that I have seen in men in my parents, my grandparents, my uncles. That's not what I saw in my husband. That's not the manhood that I saw in my husband. And it began to make me question some of the ideas that I had been raised with. And so I started this video off saying nepotism. And I believe the patriarchy is nepotism. So as I continue to go through my life, I continue to see more of that, where men were given a lot of credit because of their appearance, because of their ability to present themselves well, because of their manhood, in a sense, being male. But when it was time to perform, when it was time to lead, when it was time to guide, when it was time to be self-controlled and disciplined, they actually didn't have the skills, the qualities, the abilities, the maturity to do anything but talk. And it began to make me have a lot of different questions for the men that I met, because I wanted to actually gauge them as people and not based on just their resume. Because a lot of people look good on paper. A lot of people look good when they come and they dress and they have the interview. But then when you put them in the real life situation, they cannot perform. And so I believe now that, based on everything I've seen over the last 15 to 20 years, that generally women are better leaders. Generally women perform better under pressure. Generally women rise up and meet the obstacles head on. And I'm not the only one that's saying that, because the research is coming out that women are pulling ahead of men in everything: education, home ownership, jobs, and men are dropping out of the job market. Men are turning to alcohol, drugs, suicide, criminality, and they're just not meeting the requirements of the modern world. And still, men are still being preferred over women. That's nepotism. Still, men are being given so much credit that they didn't earn. That's nepotism. Still, men are being called leaders when a lot of them are not showing a single ounce of leadership. That's nepotism. Their connections, their history, their maleness is giving them options they didn't earn. And I think the patriarchy itself is nepotism, giving them the old boys network to rely on when they haven't actually earned it. And I hope that we move away from that. May you walk in Zennurgy. Nepotism. Nepotism